China's homegrown C919 jet has hit a roadblock on its journey to global skies. Despite being equipped with Western-certified components, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, recently announced a delay in granting the aircraft its type certification. Originally expected much sooner, the certification could now take another 3 to 6 years. This move, seen by many as politically motivated, has sparked international debate and even ridicule from U.S. media outlets, some of which sarcastically suggested the C919 has no buyers. But behind the headlines lies a much more complex story, one that reflects the fierce geopolitical and economic competition shaping the global aviation industry today. In this episode, we break down the real reasons behind the C919 certification delay, and why China's response has caught the world off guard. To appreciate the full implications of EASA's delay, it's important to understand what an airworthiness certificate really means. First, what exactly is a type certificate, and why does it matter so much? In the world of aviation, such a certificate is the gold standard. It's what allows aircraft to fly not just within national borders, but across them. Globally, the two most authoritative regulatory bodies are the FAA in the United States and EASA in Europe. Certification from either body is generally accepted by dozens of countries around the world, making it a de facto license for global operation. Without such certification, commercial aircraft are effectively barred from most international routes. Recognizing this reality, China made significant strategic concessions in the C919's development process. In 2019, Beijing signed the China-EU Bilateral Aviation Safety Agreement, which provided a legal foundation for mutual recognition of airworthiness certifications. The agreement stipulates that if a Chinese-made aircraft complies with EASA's technical standards, then it should be eligible for certification. China followed through, not just with paperwork but with engineering. The C919 was built around a Western parts ecosystem specifically to meet international standards. The aircraft's LEAP-1C engines were jointly developed by General Electric and Safran, a Franco-American collaboration whose products already power Airbus A320neo aircraft and have been certified by both the FAA and EASA. Additionally, the C919 features a Honeywell fly-by-wire control system, Rockwell Collins radar systems, Parker Hannifin's fuel infrastructure, and Michelin tires. By any reasonable technical metric, the C919 is a globally integrated aircraft. Yet, EASA's Executive Director Luc Titgat recently stated that despite these components being individually certified, the full aircraft needs to undergo extensive evaluation as a system, potentially taking up to 6 more years. Meanwhile, Western media outlets mocked the delay, suggesting that no one wants the C919 anyway. But is that claim fair? While it's true that EASA and FAA certifications open doors to the biggest global markets, they aren't the only paths to commercial viability. The C919 has already received type certification from China's Civil Aviation Administration, CAAC, which allows it to operate domestically. And that's no small feat according to the International Air Transport Association, IATA. China is projected to become the world's largest aviation market by 2042, with demand for over 9,000 new aircraft, accounting for nearly a quarter of global demand. In other words, even without EASA certification, the C919 has a massive market at home. Additionally, COMAC is actively engaging with countries across Southeast Asia, including Malaysia and Vietnam, which have expressed interest in purchasing the jet and may recognize Chinese certification independently. Contrast this with Airbus, which is more dependent on the Chinese market than many realize. Since 2019, Airbus has overtaken Boeing as the global leader in commercial aviation, delivering 766 aircraft in 2024 with nearly 878 new orders. almost 2/3 of global market share. Much of that success is thanks to China, Airbus's largest national customer since 2006. Over 2,200 Airbus aircraft are currently in service in China, making up more than half the country's civil aviation fleet. In fact, Airbus has invested heavily in China, establishing 6 joint ventures with Chinese partners covering everything from design and composites manufacturing to final assembly. Its Tianjin final assembly line now produces up to 6 aircraft per month, a critical boost to Airbus's global capacity. This deep market integration suggests that any retaliatory measures from China could directly impact Airbus's bottom line. So why is EASA dragging its feet? It's hard to ignore the political and economic undercurrents. The duopoly between Boeing and Airbus has dominated the global aviation market for decades. The C919, while still in its early stages, poses a potential threat to that status quo. Though it currently competes in the narrow-body, mid-range category against the Airbus A320 and Boeing 737, its success could eventually erode their market share. There's also a strategic angle. Civil aviation is a cornerstone of national security and industrial strength. Western governments are understandably reluctant to see China become a serious competitor in such a sensitive, high-tech field. Delaying certification buys time for Airbus and Boeing to innovate, and for geopolitical strategies to adapt. Let's not forget history. China has faced similar setbacks before. In 2014, China and the EU outlined a roadmap for space cooperation, including plans for joint deep space missions and astronaut training. European astronauts even came to China, trained at Yantai Space Training Center, and studied Chinese in preparation for future missions aboard China's space station. Yet in 2023, the head of the European Space Agency abruptly announced that political and financial constraints would prevent any actual cooperation, effectively ending the project. Earlier still, China tried to collaborate with the EU's Galileo satellite navigation system in the early 2000s. Despite initially being welcomed, China was later sidelined under US pressure, forcing it to develop its own Beidou navigation system, which is now fully operational. Ironically, Galileo remains incomplete to this day. So how should China respond to EASA's latest move? First, by doubling down on self-reliance. COMAC has already begun working with the Aero Engine Corporation of China, AECC, to eventually equip the C919 with domestically produced CJ-1000 engines. Once this transition happens, China's dependency on foreign propulsion systems, and, by extension, foreign certifications, will decrease significantly. Second, by leveraging market power strategically. While China is unlikely to impose outright bans on Airbus, it can gradually shift procurement in favor of domestic aircraft. This would be a clear signal that access to its massive market comes with expectations of reciprocity. Third, China can expand its aviation partnerships through the Belt and Road Initiative. Countries like Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia have already signed mutual certification recognition agreements with China. Scaling this diplomatic effort could create a parallel ecosystem of aviation standards, reducing reliance on Western certification bodies. Finally, China should maintain long-term composure. While EASA's delay may seem like a setback, international cooperation remains essential for the aerospace industry. Rather than retreat, China should continue improving the C919's safety, reliability, and cost-effectiveness to earn global trust organically, just as it did with Beidou, and just as Huawei did in the semiconductor space after facing similar headwinds. In the end, EASA's decision may be a temporary hurdle, but it could prove to be the catalyst that propels China's aviation industry into a new era of innovation and independence. The C919 is not just a commercial aircraft, it is a statement of intent. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive into global affairs.